set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T, Commander.
Maximum warp!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core Podcast. Thank you for joining us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, or anywhere you're able to get your favorite podcasts. I hope you're a subscriber because Warp Core's coming at you twice a week on Warp Wednesdays and Star Trek Saturdays. We are jumping back on the Strange New Worlds bandwagon today with Episode 3 of Season 3, titled Shuttle to Kenfori. An interesting little off-ship episode. We don't get too many of those sometimes, but Strange New Worlds is back with some heat. And they are tackling a lot of these sci-fi tropes head on this season. Really looking forward to talking about this one and the quest for the flower that may save a life. Fert Derby, what can you tell us about the shuttle to Kenfori?
Hi guys, we are taking that shuttle to Kenfori, Episode 3, Season 3. Strange New Worlds is definitely delving deeper into the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. We have a lot of talent behind this episode that has worked on prior episodes of this show. See if you can follow the bouncing ball. Our director is Dan Liu. Dan Liu came on in Season 2, and he helmed Memento Mori, which was Episode 4 of Season 2. That was our first introduction to the Gorn. So he knows how to do horror beats, as this episode demonstrates. He also did an Uhura Forward episode in Season 2, Lost in Translation, Episode 6. So Dan has clearly been voyaging with this crew before. Our co-writers, we have Onitra Johnson. She co-wrote Memento Mori, so she also had some Gorn experience under her belt. And she also did the Season 2 episode, The Elysian Kingdom, in which Mbenga woke up and all the crew was in sort of a medieval costumes, sort of a Robin Hoodish. You will recall. We covered it here on the Warp Core podcast.
I am not a merry man.
In a Season 2 recap. Be sure to check the archives for what we thought of the Elysian Kingdom. So that was her. And then we have Bill Wolkoff, his first appearance for Season 3. And Bill's been everywhere. Bill is a busy Star Trek Strange New Worlds executive producer. We got him all the way back. We introduced him in Season 1 with the Ghosts of Illyria, Episode 3. That's when Pike and Spock were trapped on that mining planet, and there was demons, perhaps, or crew members from the prior mission that were now terrorizing them. It also had horror beats to it. Bill, he helped write the live-action Lower Decks crossover in Season 2, Those Old Scientists. He co-wrote the Subspace Rhapsody episode of Season 2 when the Enterprise kept bursting into song. So he's done both drama and fanciful reimaginings of the brand. So there's a lot there. Oh, and he also gave us Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. I believe that was a Season 1 episode where they were going to sacrifice the child. And Pike was against all of that, tradition, royalty, all that. Anyways, so we have Dan directing. We have Onitra and Bill writing. And we have, don't say the Z word, we have a lot going on here. And I guess that's where my problem with this episode. We've been talking about sevens on the warp cores. And for this viewer, Shuttle to Kenfori could not maintain that lofty perch. And here's why. And it's a very simple, straightforward, reasoning from this viewer that this particular show has a lot of great character beats. We have Captain Battelle, whose Gorn infection has reemerged and is threatening her life further. After we thought we had solved it way back in the season 3 premiere, but we didn't. Spock and Chapel's emergency surgery was only a temporary solution, and they still need to fix it. So they craft a plan to basically make her hybrid blood stabilized, but she's always going to have this condition now. It's not something they can take from the bloodstream, and they don't want to tell Pike that, obviously, as he is romantically involved with her and cares about her and so forth. And so they're keeping this from him from the episode for a good portion of it. And when he discovers that he's been misled and the facts have been obfuscated, he reacts as anyone would who is, facing the loss of a loved one. He doesn't take it well. And not so much in his capacity as a captain, but as a red-blooded human being. So that's a big emotional storyline to play. We've got to go down to this planet. We have a possible cure. It's not really going to cure her, but it's the best we can do. And we don't want to tell you all the facts. In fact, we didn't even want you to go on the mission because we knew if we told you, you would object. So you have that beat going on here. You have the continuation of the Mbenga storyline from season 2, where he basically assassinated a Klingon foe from his past, whom we expected was trying to rehabilitate himself, his name, his house, the Klingon reputation following the Klingon War. And if you'll recall that episode, there was ambiguity with Mbenga. Was it self-defense? Was it cold-blooded murder? And there was ambiguity with him and Pike, how it was resolved. Pike basically covering for his friend, not really wanting to go too deep into the details. So it was always sort of an unspoken little secret that they were kind of keeping. And here it comes full to the fore when that assassinated Klingon's daughter shows up seeking vengeance in an unusual way. She's not really mad that Mbenga killed Dad, but she has her own reasons for wanting to kill the good doctor. So you have that. And then you have, and then you have the Battelle Pike, the final thing when he finally confronts her with, you were going to go through this and not tell me. Well, I'm sorry that my dying was going to hurt your feelings. That, for someone who's been in a long-term relationship, that line had the sting of truth to it. So there's a lot there. Now, here's the problem. You have these great... Oh, and you have Erica and Una. You have this conflict where Erica is still suffering PTSD and possible Gorn intrusion into her consciousness and subconsciousness. She's being a little belligerent. She's being a little defensive and argumentative. You've had it in staff meetings and in classrooms all the time. They're talking back, and they just need to shut their yaps and get to work. And in the end, the Una, chews her out as much of a chewing out as we'll see in a Strange New Worlds episode, and suspends her. I want your badge and your gun, or in this case, you're not going to fly the ship for a couple of weeks. And it's a great moment for Rebecca Romaine, both captaining the ship while Pike and Mbenga are planetside, as well as, laying down discipline. I like you, Erica. I think you're fabulous at what you do, but you will follow orders, and you willfully disobeyed mine. So all of that, gentlemen, all of those are tremendous ongoing seeds for this show, for this episode, and they work. Here's what doesn't work, is the shoehorned in zombies. Because after Walking Dead, after Last of Us, after World War Z, after 28 days, weeks, and years later, the whole concept of the zombification, particularly those that don't have any real... They're just grunt and chase. the novelty is sort of worn off, going all the way back to George A. Romero's classic Night of the Living Dead, 1968. Like, we've plowed that ground many, many times. I think you can make an argument, and I'm attempting to, that this episode would have been successful with all of those emotional beats I just described to you, and with a Klingon hunting party hunting the Mbenga and Pike on this uncertain world for the reasons, the purposes of vengeance, family honor, and so forth. Now, you would have had to tweak it so that the female Klingon captain, who was giving me a Beator and Lursa kind of vibe, I just sort of threw that out there. You would have had to tweak how she ended up meeting her fate, you know, in terms of that, because she ends up self-sacrificing to the horde of zombies and so forth. I guess what I'm saying is, you could have done a zombie episode. Okay, we've got to go down to the planet and get the flower. Oh, and the previous crew turned into moss-covered zombies and they're going to eat us. That's an episode. That's fine. It's a more basic episode, but you could play it straight as a horror piece and then still keep all of your emotional beats that we described, except really for the Mbenga Klingon subplot. You could just do a straight thing. Why didn't you tell me that this flower, this cure is going to possibly, you know, further? It's not, you know, how much longer does she have? You could have done the Erica rebellion. You could have done all of that and zombies. That's fine. My proposal is to take out the zombies and just have the Klingon Mbenga storyline. They go down, the station was abandoned, you know, during the war. There are no zombies running around the corridors. There are these flowers and all this decay. And the Klingons have been tracking Mbenga, as they said. They blow up the shuttle. They trap him on the surface. We still have to get the Enterprise through the asteroid belt, and we have to do it faster than 6 hours. I mean, all of that still works. And you don't need a single zombie in there to do that. And I just thought that this was a case of having too much dessert and too much cake, because I don't think that ultimately the zombies, who are just going to press themselves against the force field and so forth and eat our Klingon captain when we need our guys to escape, I really, really didn't think that it added. And I think that there were so many great character moments in here. And I feel like the whole Mbenga Klingon confrontation in the force fields is somewhat diminished, because, you know, you've got extras pressing their faces against the green screen and growling at them. So I guess that was my concern. I didn't get to write the episode, so it's not my call.
Yeah.
I just think there was too much here when you could have had just a clean, really just a hornet's nest. Yeah.
I think that's the key words, is too much here. And what I mean by that is, you're actually going to make me downgrade my original Warp Core for this now, because those are good points. But now maybe we're seeing the limits of a 10 episode season, right? Where you can't have that extra space built in if you wanted to do 2 separate stories like that, or however many episodes are in a season. I thought it was 10. Yeah. So now you're jamming all of that into one episode. I know it was tropey, but these writers, at least for me, continue to figure a way around those tropes. I feel like you can throw anything at this writing crew, and they make it work. So to your point, I think this episode, this is going to sound like a weird comment, I think it could have been worse, and I think they did a really good job with what they had, which is, I felt like they wanted to do a zombie episode, and this was the best way to do it, because that's how this. It's just like the next episode that we're going to see. Again, I feel like they took an idea that's kind of out there, and they did an amazing job with it. Though I have one slight issue with that episode, which we'll get to in a second. And yeah, I also feel like they kind of. I was slightly disappointed in the Mbenga fight a little bit, because you're right. I think there was a little something taken away from that. But I still like the episode. I'm probably going to take a half a Warp Core off of what I was going to give it, but I'm there with you on. I think the number of episodes in the season makes something like this jam-packed like you said. Urza?
I'm going to take the counterpoint. I thought this played very well. I think that you have to escalate the stakes in these episodes. You only get 10. And I don't think it was crammed. I actually think it worked out because they're looking for this flower for medicine. It's the basic premise of the episode. But it's dangerous. Dangerous how? Well, it can completely rewrite your DNA. How do you illustrate that? How do you really make the impacts of the misuse and or accidental discharge of this kind of material? You could do it as a virus, but we've seen that before. Not just in TOS and not just in TNG, but in every Star Trek, they do some episode where some sort of virus rips through the crew, and either everybody turns into like id, and freezes themselves or whores themselves out or whatever, or you get the one where you're slowly changing into a lizard thing and you kidnap Janeway to make little lizard babies. And those are fine, and those are great episodes, but this takes it to a level that I think makes a little more sense. It's an off-world, colony aimed at making medicine, potentially, and an experiment goes wrong, transforms this whole colony after a Klingon attack, because the Klingons famously aren't careful when they're attacking something, and it results in this zombification, which is not a zombification, it's a complete transformation of their DNA, so don't use the zombie word, of course, which I giggled at. It was kind of cheesy, but I thought it worked. The science was there, it made sense, and how else do you know that Captain Battelle is really putting her life in the balance? Like, it could be just any other medicinal flower. So for that, I thought it worked.
I love how they broke the fourth wall by saying don't say the Z word. I mean, they were purposefully, I feel like those writers were completely playing with that. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yep.
And to throw that out there, for some reason, made me like it just that much more, that they were acknowledging, yes, this is a trope, but watch what we do with it. That is what I liked about that.
I think Ursa, and perhaps in a Voyager episode that we'll be covering here on the Warp Core podcast, stay tuned. I think the idea, if you really wanted to escalate the stakes then, and again, this is just me, then perhaps a direct infection might have been the way to go. Perhaps Pike or Mbenga could have started, in a very rudimentary way. They don't need to fully transform into Nosferatu, but perhaps they needed to have that process that had affected the other things going there. So now you've got a race against time. I like I said, I'm not critiquing the overall intent, and I think that it was handled as you were going to do it, but I just thought that we saw Mbenga and his PTSD and Chapel, like we made a big deal about how the war affected them psychologically, and that they were still carrying these scars. And you had this opportunity with this confrontation to revisit this storyline. And again, I forgot the other emotional beat, Mbenga and Pike sitting there, and are you my friend or are you my captain? What you heard down there on the planet, that's what happened. And Pike basically rejecting that and saying, no, what I heard was somebody who was under duress, telling a fiction. So Pike is buying into the lie, or the cover-up, if you will, and he would do so because he knows Joseph Mbenga's heart and character and so forth, and he's not going to bring up his friend on charges of murder or assassination. So like I said, there's so much really good character stuff that they nailed in the dialogue and in the acting, and have been set up in prior episodes, and we're getting payoffs here emotionally that are very, very satisfying. And I just thought, I think what you're describing, this zombie episode, I think it's a good episode, but I just, with Erica rebelling and all of that, I mean, they're not rebelling to go save them from zombies. They have no idea what's going on planet side. They're trying to race that Klingon battle crew. Like, all of the big stuff seemed to be taking place with the Klingon involvement, why are they stranded on the planet? Because the hunting party, and I just feel like, oh, and look over here, there's zombies. I get Ursa's point. I think there's a good zombie episode in there. I don't know if it was the good episode with the Klingons seeking vengeance on Mbenga episode, but that's me.
I'm going to throw one past you here because I
Okay.
do this every episode, which can be heard on Spotify as well. I mean, why aren't we y'all should be playing this in the background, just listening as your workday goes along as we spin all these great things Star Trek. I want you to think about the Erica thing when we knew that she increased the speed so the Klingons would know. So here's my question. Would you have handled it like number 1 did after the event, or would you have handled it with Erica like Pike kind of handled it with Mbenga? Because to me, those are two different captaining styles, right? I felt like number 1 was going by the book, and this is how it is, and this is how it's going to be, and if you do it again, you gone. But then we've got Pike manipulating the book, kind of Kirk-esque, and letting Mbenga know, I've got your back, kind of did the right thing, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that Pike would have handled Erica the way that number 1 did?
That's a great question to
Yes,
pose.
that is a great question.
Yes, it is.
I think the interesting take here is that this is totally Pike, right? We know that from TOS. Pike does the same thing with the mind control planet. He alters the record, keeps it under wraps so that he can kind of lay the foundation for what we see in TOS. This is just a reflection of that. That's just Pike, who he is as a character, who he is as a captain. Una, on the other hand, here is sort of playing the straight man number 1. It's the Riker Picard flip of the coin, where if Picard's the authoritarian, Riker's a bit more of lead with the heart, although I still follow orders. And I think it's an interesting blending of both, because I think Una is setting a hard tone, like there has to be consequences. This can't happen again. But look, I get it. I get that you're hurting, that you're trying to do something. So she's also leading with the heart, but she's having that hard conversation. And she's having that reminder almost that, like, we are a team, but I am your boss. And this, of course, is brought up in what will be the next episode, too. Same theme. And I think what we're really seeing here in this 3rd season is Una is developing into a captain herself. We know after the events of this, prior to TOS, Una goes on to become a captain on another ship. So I think we're seeing the birth of a captain in a way. And not that she's not incapable, of course, and she always has been, but this is really her stepping into that role because Pike is moving closer and closer to his ultimate fate. So I think, I think what you get with that and with this Klingon storyline is you have to sort of tighten up some of the loose ends as you get closer and closer to the end of this series. With Dr. Mbenga, like, we know from TOS, he's still there. He's still a doctor on the Enterprise. He's still an important person. He doesn't have Klingons after him. So how do you resolve that effectively? Well, you can't just have a battle to the death with a hunting party. There has to be an out, and it has to be clean. The only way to have a clean out is to have that effectively resolve emotionally and remove those Klingons. No other Klingons are after him because she was dishonored. She had to beg and plead to get a chartered flight to this planet to get to him. So there's no love lost. If she gets annihilated on this planet and the Enterprise gets away, that battlecruiser doesn't really care. Goes back to business as usual. But what does matter is that she gets into Tovacor. The only way she can do that, in keeping with Klingon tradition, is to either assassinate the assassin or die an honorable death. And if it's just them and the hunting party on this abandoned planet, you can't have the honorable death. And if Mbenga duels her to the death, I don't think you can have Pike just simply overlooking that. because it's not really self-defense, and he has to admit to what he did, otherwise that arc is not complete. So I think you get a good completion of that story, and you give some credence to that Sto-vo-kor storyline, which, again, this gets back to TNG, it gets back to Deep Space Nine. That is an important thing to bring up, and it's another one of those callbacks to previous lore that's going to bring in that core Star Trek audience. So I think it's very well put together. It is a lot, but I think it works for those reasons.
Real quick, before you jump in, you just made me think of this. Mbenga is going to have to get demoted.
Ooh.
So how does that happen?
Interesting.
So that's a great point, because McCoy's going to come on board and be the chief doctor. So when does that happen? Is that a Kirk decision? Does that create then some? Because I'm convinced this is going to spin off into a TOS. Does that become a Kirk and Mbenga issue then? Because maybe Kirk demotes Mbenga and brings Bones on board, but that's a whole nother one.
I don't know that I don't know that it would be an active demotion, because again, we like Joseph and we think he's an honorable Starfleet officer. I think maybe he steps aside and says, I want to focus more on research, or I don't want to see as many patients. Like, you can do it in a way where he can have agency and sort of say, yeah, I've been running this thing, it's stressful, look what it's done to the family, and I prefer to maybe focus more on this, and this, and you can deal with the transporter accidents and the viruses that are running through the ship. I mean, that's a way to do it without making it an interpersonal conflict. But as you were throwing me that curveball there, I wanted to sound in on the captaining, should you choose A or B, Una or Pike. I think in reality I would behave like Pike and try to find that ground, particularly if I had a relationship with a subordinate, crew member, again, that I considered my friend. That's probably the most realistic way I would look at it. I would like to aspire to be somebody who could toe the line. And, I think Ursa played it best. We can be friendly, but you work for me. I think that would be the aspiration if I thought I had that kind of, stomach for that. But I think I would probably try not break rules, not engage in illicit behavior, but I just feel like I would try to find the least, I don't know if I could have those hard conversations. And I guess that's the measure of a true leader, is that you can. So good for Una, and good for Rebecca Romaine, because we talked early in the season how perhaps the Christine Chapel Spock romantic storyline was kind of taking up a lot of oxygen. But here in these next two episodes, she gets to come forward in her own fashion and demonstrate, all of the positive qualities that she has as both an actress and a character. And this was a good one. This was a good counterpoint there. And arguably some of my favorite moments in this show are on the bridge when they have to get through, asteroids and Klingon battle cruisers and the like. And it's just like, all right, fine, we'll do it your way, but you are in big trouble when we get out of this, kind of a vibe.
I will go first, because now I'm changing
Again,
my demotion of this. I'm going to increase it because of the ending. And let me say one more thing. I like how the writers, when Una disciplines Erica, they don't wuss out at the end and go, and by the way, great job. No,
right.
You're relieved for duty for 2 weeks. Like, there is a consequence, and I'm not going to compliment you for not following my orders, even though it worked out. And I think that's a very important point, that because sometimes episodes, they'll do that, right? Like, wink, wink, you still did great. Nope. 2 weeks off duty. You know what? I was going to drop it to 5.5, and I'm going to go with my 6. It's a 6 out of 7 for me, especially via our discussion. So I was at a 6. I was going to drop it to a 5.5, and now I push it back up to a 6. Because of my great point about 2 different ways of captaining as well, I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit, because I think that is one way to kind of to kind of look at it. Urza,
I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 7. And my reasoning for that is I hate zombies. I think they're dumb. I think they are.
you
Just-
kill me.
I just think all the zombie movies and shows are terrible that I've ever seen, other than the original Night of the Living Dead, which I thought was a masterpiece. I really don't care for them. And so when I saw what they were doing, I was very hesitant. But I saw the utility of what they were doing, and I love a Klingon Stovacor episode. I love a good redemption arc, and I love a good conflict that reaches a resolution that shows that the person doesn't just know their enemy, but they respect their enemy. And that is a huge deal. And when Mbenga, notices that she's sacrificing herself as an honorable death and, basically wishes her well by saying the doors of Stovacor will open for you, that hit hard because Klingon honor and the lore surrounding that is so deep into the Star Trek lore that it's like, if they screwed that up, I would probably really not like this episode at all. But the fact that you find somebody who's supposed to be a all the way down to the molecular structure expert of the Klingon enemy, he respects their culture. He has a high level of knowledge and respect for somebody who very rightfully wants to kill him. And he's actually open to it. He's like, sure, fine, go ahead. And it just, I don't know, for me, that gut punch of like, she's reluctantly accepting this fate because he's not playing her game, but he's allowing her this dignity. That to me really sealed the deal on that storyline. And to be honest, I liked the scientific explanation and the stakes they raised for Captain Battelle and Dr. Mbenga's little gene therapy he's going to do, because it could go incredibly wrong. Just like the fix with Una's DNA doesn't seem to have done the trick. And moreover, the whole Spock mind meld thing, I'm sure that's going to come back up because something within Captain Battelle is clearly wrong. So there's a lot going on here that, to me, it touches on the best of the science aspect of Star Trek, because we're going to get some episodes which are lighter and goofier and lean into the meta of Star Trek. We may be talking about this in the next episode. But they're still good. This one leans way heavier on its own canon, on its own storytelling. It is so deep in impact of an episode that I feel like you had to jam pack it with a lot of heavy emotion and still do it in a way that feels satisfying. And to do that with zombies, which I don't like, that impressed me to a point where like I maybe would have been at a 6 or a 5. You can't impress me with zombies. This is the first time I'm going to go on a limb and say almost ever that has happened.
All right, gentlemen, I won't tell you where I was leaning, but I will say that both of your arguments, particularly Ursa's staunch defense of the storytelling, has solidified my warp core. My objections remain. I like zombies. Ursa and I find ourselves on opposite ends of the bargaining table there. That's fine. I've just had my fill of them for now. I think a 15-year diet throughout various entertainment platforms has, I would like to see perhaps a different avenue explored going back. Let's go back to vampires. No. I really want to call out Anson Mount too, and not as Captain Pike, not as, cool, calm, collected, hit it. But his scenes with Battelle, whether it's done in a slightly comic fashion in certain episodes or here where there's taut emotional stakes, like sometimes he says the wrong thing. Sometimes he behaves in a relationship and you wince and you say, ooh, read the room. And he's not afraid to play that because he's human. And like I say, that their final confrontation, he basically has to surrender his objections and embrace her. And that's what it feels like. It's more of an emotional surrender. Like even though he has his own POV and so forth. When she, I quoted the line earlier, I'm sorry that my death is going to hurt your feelings. Like, that stings. And that's the kind of thing you say to somebody in anger in an argument and unwitting. But it's true, in a sense, the way that he's coming at it. And I just think, with everything else we're doing here and all the focus on all the different threads, I love what he was doing here. Showing vulnerability, showing that it can be messy, that when it comes to people we care about, that sometimes we're not always the smoothest in how we articulate or project those emotions. And so I want to give hats off to him for that in this episode. Very well done. So let's go 5, because again, my objections to the zombies, notwithstanding, I think the emotional beats of this are really, really good. And I wish I had been in the writer's room and we could have gone a different way. But I think Ursa Masters' points defending Stovacor and all that, amazing. He should have been in the writer's room, throwing a Diet Coke at me and saying, "Bah, sit down, Campbell. What are you going for there?" So anyways.
I think all 3 of us should be in the writing staff at Paramount. And I know everybody at Paramount, including the people who really matter, Rebecca Romaine and her husband, who shall not be named because he's not in this show. I think they should take note. For sale, us 3. Get us a writer's contract offsite, and we could be contributors, proofreaders. Just put us on the payroll already. But here at the Warp Core Podcast, we bring you the best Star Trek content you can get from 3 graying, wink wink, fellas in the Midwest and in the Far West. And we'd love if you would subscribe to us, drop us a like, leave us a comment. What did you think about the zombies in this episode? A hot topic for Strange New Worlds, but looking forward to our next jaunt with that gallant crew of the Enterprise. I will leave us with this, as our favorite Vulcan had very little to do with this episode. Live long and prosper.